Hello and welcome once again to It's a Frankly Harry podcast. I'm your host, Frank Weber. So glad you could join me once again in the forest. Have a big show for you today. A lot of things to discuss. As I was coming up with a list of things to talk about, I have actually axed a couple of those. But first thing, I want to tell you a couple of personal stories. Well, actually really just one story and just kind of another happening. But I had this domestic issue this week. As some of you know, I've become kind of paranoid this year because we've had a lot of house repair issues and concerns about getting things done and doing it on a budget and what was covered by insurance and what wasn't and all that sort of thing. But last week, which I guess was week before last by the time this airs, I started hearing this weird hissing sound that I think was coming from the refrigerator, and it was coming at very odd times, not particularly consistent. I don't think it was even happening 24 hours a day. And certainly not continuous either, but my wife noticed it when she was home last weekend, and then of course I immediately got paranoid, wondering if there was something wrong with our refrigerator, and it had just like this really high-pitched short squeal or kind of wheezing noise, maybe a hissing noise, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. The refrigerator's about 15 months now, I think we've had it, and unfortunately that is longer than the manufacturer's warranty. But then I got this 3-year, I guess technically extended warranty, and then I called them, and of course I really wanted them to send somebody out because my wife was talking about it on Sunday, and then by Monday I was like, well, it's continuing or whatever, and I wanted them to send somebody out, but of course they really don't want to do that if they can avoid it, even though you've already paid them. So it's kind of like a lot of insurance. And they said, well, it may need to be defrosted, which it probably does. I don't think I have done that since we bought it 15 months ago. So, I took all the food out and put it in coolers and defrosted it for 24 hours, and then the hissing sound, though, persisted even when the refrigerator was off, which I thought was really weird, and concerns about whether Freon was leaking out, whether the refrigerator was on or off. And then by Tuesday, of course, I put the food back in and plugged it back in, and everything cooled off again, but I was still hearing this hissing noise. And then by Wednesday, again, remember, I'm not hearing this 24 hours a day. I mean, it seems like it's only happening between about 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. Really weird. I mean, and it couldn't be anything else in the kitchen or anything like that. And so it starts up again about the typical time on Wednesday, and I'm getting really tired of this. And by the way, on Tuesday, after I had plugged it in, I know I'm always backtracking on this show. Maybe I'm not even the best storyteller or anything, but Tuesday after I had plugged it in, I talked to this different person at the warranty thing, and they still wouldn't send anybody out. And then they were telling me, well, we don't cover intermittent things either. And of course I asked, well, what the hell am I paying this for, And she wanted me to take a picture with audio of this sound, which I still don't really know exactly where it's coming from on the fridge or elsewhere in the kitchen, but I don't think, of course, it could be coming from anywhere else in the kitchen. So I told her that that's not a real easy thing to do because I don't know when it's going to make this noise, and I can't just sit there with my phone or another camera and try to take a picture of this. But she didn't understand this. They still don't want to send anybody out. And so we haven't been in contact since then. But by the time Wednesday came around and this thing started making its noise again by 11 o'clock, 11:30, whatever it was, I'm really tired of this now, and I finally noticed and understood, even though I had seen it already on top of the fridge, that there was an overturned battery-powered air freshener thing. I call it like a Renews It or something, I think it's called. I don't know what the hell it's called. Some of you women out there probably know. But it was overturned on its side. It doesn't have anything. It has no freshener in it. But it was going off but it was on, and it was making this noise by itself. And so I have removed it and turned it off, and so there is nothing to be concerned about now. My wife says that she puts that in there in the kitchen when she's cooking to keep things, kind of smelling fresh and whatnot. But that is a story, boys and girls, about sometimes things that kind of seem like big inconveniences are really little nothings, and it's nice to have them every once in a while. The only other thing that's kind of been going on in the house this week is my neighbors behind me have undertaken yet another project, and I know that I haven't really talked about this too much, but it seems like they have a never-ending slew of backyard and roof projects. And a lot of the workers they hire come in, and so we have an alley between us, and our driveways basically line up with each other, pretty much. And obviously the alley is closest to the backyard, so when they were doing a lot of stuff in their backyard, like building a new fence or a deck or any other millions of projects, like it seems like they've been doing forever and ever, they would come in and drive through the alley and block our driveway. And apparently the only people who are legally allowed to do that are utility workers, which is, electricity and gas, and I think cable and internet go into that category as well, but not construction workers and carpenters and things like that. But I don't know. I was frustrated because they dropped a load of lumber off Monday afternoon, and then they left it there till Wednesday, and now apparently they're just adding on to their attic. Fortunately, these guys aren't blocking the driveway too much this time. I think they've largely left it open, and they're being courteous, but I don't know. It's just another frustration of living in this neighborhood. They're always doing something over there compared to like to us and all the other neighbors. They're just always doing these woodworking projects, and I don't know. It's another frustration of me living here, but I don't know what I can do about it. I have a lot of stuff going on, and I'm sure all of you out there have frustrations that you sometimes have with your neighbors. But I thought I would kind of just share that with you. Things are a little bit better this time, but you don't know when they're going to undertake another project. They seem to be adding on to their roof and having more attic space because they need to change. I think they're going to change their shingles because of the hailstorm that I mentioned a while back. But it's infuriating for me, and they'll usually move for you, I guess, if you really have to ask them. But I wind up moving one of my vehicles first early in the morning before they get here, so I don't have to deal with that. It's really kind of an inconvenience. I know not everybody experiences that, but I'd love to hear your stories if you have something similar going on. Now, to be fair, I think the frequency of their projects, 'cause some of you are kind of wondering about that, it's not that many. It's probably not that many days a year, but some of these things do take several days at a time. And it's usually, of course, during the warmer months. It happens often enough to be a concern for me, and, the fact that I'm doing things at the house a lot, but I don't always want to be here, and I need to get out. And I realize they can do whatever they want to with their property. I'm not saying anything against that, but there seems to be a lack of courteousness when it comes to parking in the alley. Especially these guys have these big heavy-duty trucks pulling trailers and stuff, and it seems to be inconvenient for them to pull over in front of that house because they live on a cul-de-sac. But anyway, I don't really want to take up too much time with that, but it's just I don't know, minor frustration because it happens so much. They've been there about 5 years, I think, now, and if you want me to get really PO'd, I mean, that's something that really POs me. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and move on from that. There were some other topics that I wanted to talk about today, and I actually had to nix a couple of them, at least for this show. Kind of a philosophical commentary on a number of things that have been going on lately. If you listen to this show a lot, I have a lot of things, of course, always to say about the show itself. Like, I was thinking this morning, for instance, that one of the reasons that I don't have guests on this show is because I feel like I'm not a great enunciator or sometimes storyteller or explainer of things. And if you have somebody else on the show, people will tend to interrupt you. There's a lot of people that just, for the hell of it, just want to interrupt you because you're kind of lost in the middle of a thought and you can't get your ideas out. And I have some good thoughts. I don't know if I expressed them the best way so that other people will actually get the message. But that was one of the things that I was thinking about this morning. And then the other thing that I was thinking about is a lot of the stuff in our society right now, in our world and whatever, I feel like people don't have the right understanding of it because they don't have the right context, they don't have the right framing of the issue in their mind. And if you can't get that, then you are kind of more prone. If you can't get that and you're having trouble with critical thinking skills, which a lot of people do, unfortunately, you're not going to, well, you will tend to believe whatever source who believes you without further investigating the issue. And so that's part of the reason why I have this show. I can give all sorts of opinions. I think they're good, deep, critically thought out opinions. And I wish more people thought the way I do. I know that in this world, that's not the case. Probably will never be the case, and we have to kind of make do with what we have in that regard. So I'm kind of going to go through a couple of different, or no, it's going to be kind of like last week's Q&A, except I'm going to use just one phrase on topics that are of current interest and current events. I will tell you right before we get into this, there were even more topics that I wanted to discuss. Actually, a couple of them that I had already discussed with regard to traffic etiquette. I think I discussed them a while back, probably on the original, on my old show, Frank Weber's Party. But one of them, of course, is I'm not going to talk about them, but I'm going to tell you what they were before I discuss the other things. But one of them was the free and unimpeded use of the slow lane without having somebody in a hurry threaten your life behind you or whatnot. And then the other was the somewhat controversial issue of the red left turn arrow, which in my driving experience is something we've only had in Texas since about the year 2000. I'm not going to talk about those today. I may save them for another show, but because there's some more important things I wanted to talk about. So without further hesitation or ado, let's go ahead and get into it. The first phrase of topic here today is Cracker Barrel. Now, this has been in the media a lot lately, and I'll just kind of go ahead and give my take on this here. For those of you who may not know, and there's a chance that some of you don't, from what I can, my experience anyway. Cracker Barrel is, of course, a chain of restaurants that usually, alongside interstates, usually every town has one. It is, I've enjoyed their food. It's American food with an Americana sort of setting, a rustic kind of pioneerish rural type setting. If in case you don't know, I haven't been to one in a while because my wife and I haven't really been going out to eat a whole lot lately. I'm not even sure if she's necessarily a fan of the food there. But I enjoy it because it's good, home cooking American food. And they really have an experience for people. If there's a wait to get into the restaurant, you can sit on the porch and rock in the rocking chairs, or go through the store and find some unique items that apparently you can't find in a lot of other places anymore, or some other knickknacks, souvenirs, if you will. And then you can sit down in this nice kind of rustic, old-timey setting to have a nice meal. Now, apparently, lately, the CEO and the other people, or perhaps the other board members and other people in charge there, were wanting to rebrand Cracker Barrel's iconic logo, which has not just the name, but kind of an old pioneer guy sitting in a rocking chair next to a Cracker Barrel, and possibly trying to change up the restaurant decor and make some other kind of changes that, as far as I can tell, are probably not necessary. Now, the news media coverage on this suggests, and I don't know if they've actually come out and said this, but some people ascribe the CEO as being woke, which to me is a synonym for political correctness or politically correct. That somehow the guy on the logo that you see on the sign passing by is either a member of the quote-unquote patriarchy, which is a bullshit term, or possibly that somehow connotes racism, which I don't understand how that works. There's all kinds of people who come to Cracker Barrel. It's an American institution, if you will. And apparently, for a while, they were kind of sticking to their guns and making these wholesale changes, but earlier this week, they relented and recanted and decided that they're going to keep things the way that they are, and that is a victory in terms of the power to the people. If you're informed and you properly understand the issues and you get mad enough about it, and there's enough of you who are concerned about it, and you act appropriately to counter these changes, the people can have whatever they want to. I mean, it's just not that hard. So that's one of the lessons here. I don't know for certain if the changes that they were wanting to make were necessarily because of wokeness or political correctness, but that seems to be a real concern in society these days, considering large businesses and people who are out of touch with the people. It's possible that they may have been doing this for simply change for the sake of change, which if you know me, I'm absolutely not for either. It is possible from a business perspective that this could have been happening because they thought changing up their brand and changing up their experience might lead to a better bottom line. But that's pretty doubtful. I've seen a lot of issues, and perhaps you have as well, where I don't really understand why companies want to make wholesale changes to their brand or their product. It seems very unnecessary to change logos around a lot, for instance. As far as complete rebranding, Cracker Barrel's pretty iconic, I think. The biggest rebranding and product fiasco that ever happened was about 40 years ago this summer, about this time actually, when Coca-Cola was struggling through the new Coke issue, and people didn't like the product, they didn't like the rebranding, so they had to bring everything back, and now everything seems to be good. Speaking of companies that had a kind of a woke issue in recent years, Coke, I think, was one of them. But I'm happy for Cracker Barrel, and I'm happy for the people and the frequent customers there, because it seems like things are back in an equilibrium now. I remember a lot of stories going there. I think one time when I was in dental school, I took a couple of female classmates there for lunch one time. It's a lot of fun. I wish we had gone back. I don't know why we didn't. But anyway, that was a great memory. And so whenever, I guess one thing I'll leave you with as far as branding goes, you have some other companies that are kind of in turmoil, continue to be in turmoil. The investment group that I have some experience with in another investment, the same one is kind of messing with Southwest Airlines brand and trying to turn them into kind of a conformist airline. And I don't think that's going very well, and very sad. I think Herb Kelleher would be very disappointed in what Southwest has become there. But thank goodness Cracker Barrel seems to have overcome for now. All right, so the next topic on my list is tariffs. Okay, so this is going to be kind of controversial, I think, and it doesn't have to be, but years and years ago, I tell people all the time that when I was a kid, I would get, on certain occasions, I would have a gut feeling based on something that I heard or experienced that didn't really sit well with me. And of course, as a young kid, I didn't really understand why. But the United States, for my entire life, and I think a lot of people are saying that it extends all the way, it goes back about 80 years to the end of World War II, has been running a trade deficit. And I don't know if that's because we felt sorry for certain countries after World War II and we wanted to help them out, or why exactly that it is, but usually running a trade deficit isn't really that great for one country's economy. And one of the suggestions of maybe how to rectify that as a kid going through grade school and then eventually high school was, well, why couldn't we just do tariffs and things like that, to kind of get people more interested in buying our goods than buying other people's goods. And so apparently that was an idea that was shot down when I was fairly young. And then when I was in high school, I took my first economics class. And if you take a class in economics in high school or college or anywhere else, or listen to a lot of economic pundits now, they've all been taught that tariffs under no circumstances are any good. Like, it's like an absolute no-no. You shouldn't have tariffs. No way, no how. That was kind of an old economy. America used to generate money for the government from tariffs back in the 1800s. But things started changing in the 20th century, and now tariffs are a bad idea. Modern economic theory poo-poos it and says it's just bad, bad, bad all the way around. Now, the problem with that, first of all, again, I have to backtrack because of my storytelling. But in theory, they're correct because they're talking about a tax on imported goods that gets passed on to the consumer, causes price inflation. However, in practice, tariffs are all over this world. Everybody who's producing something is issuing tariffs on another country's imported goods. The problem is, in this country, we've had a very uneven tariff balance. And I do think ideally there should be no tariffs anywhere. That would be true free trade. but a lot of places like the protectionist policies. But our tariffs have been in imbalance. Our taxes on certain countries' imported goods have been lower than the tariffs they have on our goods, and that's just not right. Excuse me. And President Trump, and I'll talk real quick about how I think he's doing in a little bit. Not too much on that, but has tried to get this balance back in check, and has used it as a bargaining chip and a negotiating chip, and is also using it to bring revenue into the Treasury to try to pay down our debt. Now, of course, there's also a spending problem in Congress that I wonder sometimes if they'll ever get that under control. That's still very, very concerning. But in trying to bring back the trade, to try to bring a trade balance back to our country, some of these things have to be done, and they're fairly radical, of course, compared to what recent presidents have or have not done, which is mostly have not done. I tend to think that we're going to be better off in the long term because of this, and even the Fed Chair Powell himself last week said in the Jackson Hole interview that any kind of inflation from tariffs is going to be short term. I don't know that he was goosed or paid off to say that or whatever. I don't know what the hell is going on in politics, but that led to a big market rally last Friday, and I think if people let things work their course, I think we're going to be okay on that. Ideally, there should be no tariffs anywhere, but the fact of the matter is that the world has them all over the place, and they're usually to our disadvantage in this country, so I don't see any problem with bringing that back in balance and to see where the economy goes as a result of that. However, there's been, we had the big downturn in early April because everybody is stuck on this idea that tariffs are no way, no how good at all, and but then everybody has them, and you still have to play within the system. And to me, that's just a contextual thing that a lot of people don't get, and it's also where academia, I think, gets things wrong in a practical sense. Just as an aside, I haven't really talked about politics in a little while, and I don't talk about it much on this show. I generally support President Trump and what he's trying to do. That doesn't mean I necessarily agree with everything, and I know some of the things he does are kind of over the top or considered unorthodox in a political sense. But sometimes you have to take some fairly drastic measures. For example, one of the best things that any government can do is protect its citizens while also protecting their rights. We sent the National Guard out to L.A. A couple of months ago because the local officials there are not protecting their citizens from riots and people who are supposedly there exercising freedom of speech. But of course, if you've listened to me on this show before, you can have your freedom of speech, but you can't impinge on other people's rights with that freedom of speech. You can't be a danger or a nuisance to them. You can't keep them from going about their daily business. And if there's a safety issue involved and people are handcuffing the local law enforcement, if you will, then somebody has to step in and do that. And more recently, of course, he's done the same thing in Washington, D.C. And I applaud him for that. Like I said, some of his rhetoric and talk is a little bit over the top, and people aren't used to that. I do think that his administrations and some of the more recent ones, including Bush and Obama, Bush the younger and Obama and Biden, they've all issued too many executive orders. And some of those, I think, they're supposed to be legally binding, but a lot of people wind up bringing lawsuits against those executive orders, and they wind up being more ceremonial. I am, in a sense, kind of disappointed that Congress isn't producing more reasonable legislation to send to his desk. I mean, they seem like they're AWOL a lot of times, unless there's an initiative like extending the tax cuts and everything. But there's no politician, no candidate who's perfect out there. Certain things may come out in the future that maybe were policy gaffes. Some of you may know that historically I'm a big fan of Ronald Reagan, because he was the first president that I was really kind of old enough to know. But then, you study history over the years. I mean, he made me proud to be an American. He brought America back from the problems in the 70s and everything. But then there were perhaps policy gaffes regarding mental health and illegal immigration and maybe the Iran-Contra things, the AIDS epidemic and all that stuff. But and that's unfortunate, but overall, still a pretty good president. And I tend to think that Trump will be like that as well. He just has to do some things a little bit differently and a little bit extra to actually get some things done, which I think would be good for our country. So I'm already over time, but that's okay. It's my show, and we can do whatever we want to on the podcast here, can't we? The last phrase or word that I'm going to use here on today's show is conspiracy. Now, there's a lot of people out there who will form an opinion, myself included, and somebody on the other side may disagree with it. And one of the things that they're doing, this is because conspiracy and conspiracy theory have become overused terms in this society, like racism and racist and what's the one with women? Not sexist or chauvinist, but like misogynistic, I think is the term that they use. If they disagree with you, and even though what you're saying may be none of those things, they still use it against you. Oh, that's conspiracy, or that's conspiracy theory, and that's supposed to cause you to, that's their way of saying that you're wrong and they're right, and that's bullshit. I don't want to go too deep into this, but or I don't really even want to get kind of Joe Rogan-ish on this. He talks about a lot of things about aliens and AI, occasionally JFK assassination. All of those things are, fairly conspiratorial. I mean, I do think that there are conspiracies associated with those topics, which means to say that conspiracies are a real thing. Now, whether they're true or not, or partially true, is something that we don't know, because the evidence and the other information out there hasn't been made readily available to you. But to say automatically that they don't exist is total bullshit. And actually, I've been told this since I was like 12 years old. If you're having a problem with somebody, or problem in school or something like this, and you perhaps bring forward like sort of a victim mentality and saying like, well, this is a conspiracy, and this teacher, this administrator is causing trouble for me. Most of the time it's not really true, but when you get into things like big business, big institutions, where there's a big hierarchy and a big ladder, and who knows who's really running the show at the top, those are places that are more likely to be conspiratorial. And so I just want to give you an example of this. A lot of these businesses and institutions, if they decide they don't like you, or maybe they really want to fire you, they can cook up something to get rid of you. And in that sense, that is a conspiracy. And they do exist in the real world. And I don't know if there were conspiracies against me when I was in dental school. Like, people, I think they generally liked me, but I think a lot of people were jealous of me for some reason. And I don't know if it was because of of looks or wearing red scrubs, but I went to dental school in a very political place, and it's not too far-fetched to think that there was a conspiracy to at least punish me or hold me back from going to immediately going to the next level of or grade or class in that institution. But I also want to give you an example that I think was a conspiracy that's not on the level of aliens, AI, or JFK as well. But if they want to punish you or they want to get rid of you, they will really do it. And what they do a lot of times is conspiracy. So let me give you an example here. So when I was about to go to Tech as a freshman in 1996, Texas Tech. There was a story. I need to protect. You may figure out who I'm talking about and what institution I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Tech, although there's apparently some interesting politics and maybe some conspiracies there too. But in 1996, there was a large institution here in the state of Texas that had a beloved baseball coach who had been there for, at that point, close to 30 years, almost as long as Tom Landry had been with the Dallas Cowboys when he was fired by Jerry Jones a few years before that. And this university was about to go into a new conference, and this coach was very successful, very beloved, but I think his teams had kind of lost a step or two in competition, or their opponents had kind of caught up to them as far as the competition goes, and it was more difficult for his teams to win championships either in the conference or nationally. But they're about to turn over this new leaf and go to this new place. And it wouldn't look good from a PR perspective to just to outright fire him. I think a lot of the fans and alumni would have been in uproar if they had done that. So once the season was over every year, and usually they were done, sometime in June at the latest, he would host baseball camps at the university facilities, and they were very popular camps. Made some extra money for him and this university, and they had a good deal together and everything. And at that summer, the university decided, just kind of willy-nilly out of the blue, after doing this for many, many years, that they wanted to change the way that this happened. And apparently that didn't set well with the coach, and I don't think he was ever fired, but he may have been forced to resign. I can't really remember the details of it, but the whole thing smelled bad. Anything that smells bad is not just a bad odor like mold or mildew or someone farting or whatever. I mean, it's there could be a conspiracy behind that, because they don't want you around anymore into this new era they're going, this new place they're going. And it was really sad. Good guy, seemed like a good guy, and I think they wound up getting into a lawsuit, and this university hired like one of its top lawyers, and it wound up, the university, of course, wound up winning, because that's usually how it goes in the state of Texas. But you can't tell me that there was not a conspiracy or a conspiracy theory behind that. And it boggles my mind when people just abjectly decide there is no such thing as conspiracy. It's kind of the same thing as this dislike of tariffs. Like, it seems like it's absolutely cannot be possible, don't do it, all this stuff, when in fact it's a very real thing. And so anyway, I've gone way over time. I'm almost 40 minutes in here. Don't want to take up too much more of your time this week, but anyway, I hope you find that enlightening and thought-provoking, interesting. Don't necessarily rush to judgment on it, but give it some thought, and as always, I would love, really, 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 really would love to hear from you. whether you agree or disagree. One of the worst things in producing anything like this is to be totally ignored, because it kind of feels like I'm ignored a lot of times. But yeah, just would love to hear from you, love to be more interactive with you, and as I grow this show. Let me go ahead and just do some quick calls to action. Of course, like I always say, sharing is caring. If you love the show and you love listening to me, by all means, tell your family and friends and anybody and everybody you might run into about the show. Hit the subscribe button. Would love to hear your comments and even direct messages, if you will. So that's about it for this week. I'm not going to keep you any longer. But thank you for joining me here in the forest. We'll look forward to seeing you again here next week. So until then, this is Frank Weber of It's a Frankly Hairy podcast. Looking forward to talking about more hairy things next week. We'll see you then. Thank you. I love you. Bye.